thank you to listeners who are tuning in that appreciate keeping up to snuff. The Keeping Up to Snuffness is brought to you by the Voices of Fairfield, Iowa, and beyond. That is KRUU-FM 100.1 in your local area, and also KRUU-FM.com for our streamers worldwide. And also joining us is FMC with Jason Strong on the Fairfield Media Center network. And Michael, how you doing today? Good to see you.
Good, glad to be here.
Also want to remind you that we bring you City Haps after each City Council session. So that's lunchtime Tuesday, the following Monday of each city session, and then Thursday dinner time, 6:30 p.m., and the following Monday breakfast time, 6:30 a.m. 3 chances to stay up to snuff. And speaking of which, what do you got on the docket?
I've got a lot of snuff for people to stay up with.
Good. Excellent. That means we'll have a full show. So what's first on the docket?
Actually, it's really light agenda, but
okay.
We'll fill it. We'll snuff the.
Well, we can always go to music, folks. You know, that's like
we're good. There's always something to talk about.
Or maybe even sing a song. I don't know. What do you got? I know.
Yeah.
There's always something going on.
Yeah. So we got a couple of. This is a review of the regular City Council meeting for May 11th, 2015. We started with a couple of public appearances. First, we heard from Rebecca Young. She has started. Yeah,
she's beautiful.
Near and dear. Yep, Beautify Fairfield. It's her new business. She just graduated with a degree in something that I can't remember. It's some master gardening kind of thing, and so she wants to start a nonprofit organization that will partner with anyone who's interested in beautifying Fairfield through garden spaces.
Beautiful.
Both edible and non-edible. So she said one of her pilot projects as an individual last year was the planter out in front here at the studio. Right. She's going to do that again.
And she does have a business that she operates.
Yeah. So this is, that's right. That was her business last year. This year it's the nonprofit. So she just introduced the council to her business, and the mayor told her what I told her, which is that it would be a good partnership for the Beautification Commission, since they're tasked with
Excellent.
The same type of thing. So she said, I definitely want to work with them.
Beautiful.
So I remember Nick from the Gardens, and then kind of grew into the Arbor Bar. When he first came to town, he just came to the city council to introduce himself and talk about what he was planning. And it's just a great chance to just say hello to people in city government, get a little FaceTime on FPAC and FMC, but it's kind of sweet, you know. It's like you don't have to. There's no law that says if you intend to do something in town, you must approach the city government or city council. But I just remember when Nick did it, you know, and he talked a little bit about why he chose to move to Fairfield,
Nashville.
Yeah, and it was just it was very sweet and encouraging. So we're wishing good luck to Rebecca and hope that she can find more partners within the community to realize her vision.
Well, great. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I got nothing. So go ahead.
Oh, I guess James is going to change mics. We heard from another Rebecca. This was Rebecca Johnson, the library director, and she was requesting a partial street closure for the annual summer reading kickoff. It's a program the library does to encourage kids to continue reading over the summer. Since some kids read for school, but then summer break comes, they stop reading. This program is designed to encourage them to continue. So they kick it off with an event. It's June 6th, and there'll be a bounce house and some other fun stuff out in front of the library. So the council agreed, of course, to partially close the road, not enough to interfere with the docks inn or the parking lot at the library, just a little portion there by the front. And Afton, I can't remember Afton's last name, but the youth librarian was dressed up as Robin, and she said that they're doing a hero or superhero theme. So more on that as it unfolds. I'm sure the library will publicize it, but that'll be the kickoff to there. You want this? Yep. To their summer reading program. All right, we moved on to our resolutions, action items, and ordinances. We set a public hearing for a budget amendment. This usually happens. The city sets our budget for the next fiscal year, and then we end up tweaking it before the year comes. I'd say minor tweakage, just little things here and there, but we have to put that as a public hearing for the public in case people want to come and tweak or say something about something. So that'll be at the May 26th council meeting.
Okay, put that on your calendar, folks.
Yep. I'm going to go ahead and say there's another public hearing.
Great.
That day, and that is for, let's see it here, the loan agreement with Piper Jaffray. Now that's when interest rates, people do this all the time, either individually or with business, but with interest rates are better than what we had when we took out a loan. You can refinance and save, in this case, hundreds of thousands of dollars or over $100,000 in interest. So the city's taking advantage of that. And we have to have a public hearing, which will also be on May 26th.
May 26th, okay.
About that. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts, boring little formalities that we're beholden to go through for a reason, just to keep everything as transparent as possible. It slows everything down a bit, but that's worth the price of transparent government.
Yep.
All right, this next one is a little bit near and dear to me. Now, you know, this whole Blue Zones project was totally voluntary and had no funding. So while it was a lot of fun, we really hoped that by becoming Blue Zone designated, we may be able to get some grants for some real nuts and bolts things for our community. Jenny Weber's the consultant out of Des Moines who works with us. So she passed along a Wellmark Foundation grant. So it's a foundation. Wellmark has these little mini grants, up to $25,000. And they weren't only for Blue Zones, either communities that were part of the Blue Zones project or had finished it, but she thought she'd share it with us and wanted to see if either the hospital, the school, or the city, or somebody was interested in applying. We had about 5 days to put together the application, and I saw that it was 25. I thought, okay, that's a little bite-sized piece, but what can we do with that? So I consulted our city engineer, Melanie Carlson. I said, would this pay for some sidewalk upgrades over by the new rec center? She said, you know what? It would. It would pay for connecting 6th Street to 9th Street along Jefferson. Now, the reason that is advantageous is that anybody coming up from the south side of town to go to the new pool can come up 6th. There's sidewalks all along 6th. So that's nice and safe. But then they have to cross over 9th Street right by the rec complex at the middle of the road rather than where there's a stop sign. That's just not ideal. You know, the traffic isn't stopping for them necessarily. Hopefully people will. We'll get the word out that this year that's the route they're going to have to take. So we called this the Safe Routes to Recreation. And when I talked to the administrator of the grant, the lady said, well, you know, we get a lot of requests for sidewalks. I said, but this is different. It's like this piece of the puzzle that'll connect the entire south side of town, which is where most of our residents live, with our new pool. She's like, all right, put that in the grant, but don't put in there stuff about Blue Zones. Like she warned me, don't try to talk up Blue Zones. So I didn't even mention it at all. It'd say one word, and it'd say blue, and it didn't say zone. So Melanie created a map, and we kind of tweaked the wordage, sent it in, fingers crossed. And we heard last week we got it.
Oh, good.
Full 25,000. So it's just a little portion of sidewalk, about a block and a half. But what it allows is that when it's done, which will be this fall, so it won't be done in time for this summer season, but kids who go to the pool by themselves can be on the sidewalk crossing at crosswalks where there are stop signs. It's much safer. And that's why, I think why we got the grant, because it is a safety enhancement.
And you didn't mention Blue Zones.
And we didn't mention Blue Zones. So it's kind of like
interesting how
it's
it came
funny,
down.
exactly, because it's Wellmark Foundation. Wellmark's one of the sponsors of the Iowa Blue Zones project, and yet they didn't really want it to be for that. Yeah,
maybe I guess to favor that after whatever. Who knows? Yeah, politics is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, but it was a good advice that she told me.
Yeah, and
otherwise I would have. We're Blue Zones this, we're Blue Zones that. Give us this money.
Well, you know what? It's a big part of grant writing, and it's such a great art itself. I mean, any nonprofit knows what's involved, and it's more and less, and you never know what you're going to get. But that's a nice job. I want to remind you, you're listening to Michael Halley, 4th Ward Councilman. I'm James Moore. This is solar-powered KRUU-FM and Fairfield Media Center, 100.1 on your FM dial, and we are keeping you up to snuff with what's happening at City Council. What else?
You're right about the grant thing, because it had a list of the winners from last year, and I noticed they all had like little catchy names. So I was like, we got to make a catchy name for this. So that's where Safe Route to Recreation, because there's a Safe Route to School program. So I was like, let's tweak that. And I think those little funny little things help, because you have to recognize the person or the group giving out the grant wants something too, and they want to be able to say,
that's right.
Oh, look, these are the names of the grants, and if they have a little catchy name, it helped. So who knew? That's my second attempt at grant writing, and both worked. The other one was I wrote some of the narrative for, do you remember the Hometown Rewards program?
Absolutely.
The light energy thing that ended up with the solar panels?
Yep.
That was fun, and it was easy. I mean, because it was such a natural fit. But
well, that's the other thing. The more natural the fit, the better it is. And I just will, my 2 cents advice to nonprofits is you do want to make sure there's a fit, because if you end up getting something that isn't in your wheelhouse, you end up still having to do it. And it's just great when it all fits together.
It's true.
And this is a perfect piece of a great puzzle.
Yeah, it does. It is. And you're right about the choosing the right grant for the right purpose. When I was with the Volunteer Center board, we had some grants that were as much trouble to administer as they were for the money we got. I mean, it was literally an even wash, if that. So not all grants are created equal. And you gotta look at them. This is great. They give us the funds in one lump sum.
Great.
So it makes it simple.
Very cool. And that'll be in by fall then.
Yeah. So it'll be ready for next summer. But I mean, people could still obviously they'll be using it just to get to the gym and such, probably fall and, well, it's not going to be done, but just that whole area.
Excellent.
I mean, there's other stuff out there that other places people will go. All right. The public, no, not the public, get my committees mixed up. The Economic Development Committee.
There we go.
Met, and we talked about extending that Lincoln Avenue, which is the newest city street. It's just by the Pilot Grove Bank.
I know where you're talking about.
It's a complete street, getting back to the blue zones. It has sidewalk on both sides. It's wide enough to accommodate bikes. And it goes nowhere right now. It just dead ends. So there's a developer who wants to build, and very serious about building some housing, but his property is further down from where the road ends. Pilot Grove owns the land east of their property where their bank is, and they want to develop, but there's no road there. So we looked at the TIF area, the tax increment financing, and that includes the new Casey's building, includes American, and includes Pilot Grove, and crunched the numbers. And was there a sufficient increment, basically the property tax revenue generated by those properties, to fund the extending the road? Meaning, we don't want to take it from our road use funds, because those can go to other uses, other streets in town that need fixing. We don't want to burden the taxpayers. We don't want to borrow. We're staying away from borrowing. So only if we could pay for it with the property tax revenues of that TIF district would we go ahead. So the numbers were crunched. It is within how much is going to be brought in by that increment. So we said, okay, we're going to extend the road, and should help. It's not going to be an immediate thing, but should help alleviate some of the housing issues to get some development out there, some new market rate condos and houses and such. So we move forward on the engineering service agreement. It's always the first step, is you have to get the engineer to draw it up. But we're hoping to get it done this construction season.
And that's drawn up with budget too? Or mainly just now, because the numbers seem to fit, you're just looking to see what it's going to take. So
we had a budget for the entirety of it, engineering plus construction.
Okay.
And we said, can we afford it within the TIF district? Yes.
Which it does look like. Okay.
Yeah. And that's what a TIF is really for, is infrastructure, like roads and and such.
And so the next step then is getting the plans laid out or mocked up.
Yep, and then they'll let them out to competitive bidding. Then all the bids come in, they're sealed, they're opened all at the same time publicly. And
what's the time frame on this? Any idea yet, or
this summer?
Okay.
Yeah, so we're trying to get it done this summer or fall.
Good to see construction.
Yeah, right now, again, it's my favorite street in town because, one, it's a complete street, so it's not just for cars, it's for bikes and pedestrians. But two, it's named Lincoln Avenue, and Lincoln's probably my favorite president. So I'm glad we got that far because, we have all the presidents. Right. It's like, probably not going to ever get to Clinton and Bush.
You never know.
Maybe someday.
They start repeating themselves. So.
Oh, no.
Clinton 1, Clinton 2, Clinton Bush, Bush 1, Bush 3, Bush. It's sort of like summer blockbusters, isn't it?
Well, there are some repeats earlier in there, right?
There are, yes.
Adams twice and
that's right.
Johnson twice, I think. All right. The airport is getting a new terminal. They're building a new terminal.
I always worried about that word with airports, but
I know I'm not worried. But
why do they call it terminal?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So the old one was built quite a while ago, and a lot of us don't think that airport's that well utilized, but actually really is. There are a lot of private jets that local companies use to fly their clientele in and out. So the terminal will be just a little nicer, more energy efficient.
Cool.
Have a conference room, and federal funds pay for a big bulk part of it. They were hoping would pay for more, but the feds did not feel like the conference room was necessary. So the airport has a fund that they've been saving that they'll cover the cost of that part. But we had to approve the terminal development program draft allocation. Basically, the city council has to sign off that the way that the project's being paid for, this percent from each party, that we say, okay, we're okay with that. So now they can move forward. Again, plans, bid letting. I don't know when it'll be done, but...
Well, great, though. We're hoping to have a fly-in for... we didn't quite get that organized for this year's Fairfest, but possibly for next year, and have, we have visions of golf tournaments and all those kinds of things as it expands out. It would be someone brought it to our attention this year. It didn't quite fructify, but a nicer, slightly nicer situation there. When that gets on the map of these fly-ins, people, it's really fun. They fly in, and now that we have the best burger in the state,
that's right. They gotta eat
at the
best
cider
burger.
house. Good job, guys. There, there's nice fits.
Yeah.
Like destination event, literally.
So fly-ins are people with private aircraft.
Yeah, and they do them. The flyers have magazines and know what they're doing, and so if they get excited about some spot, just all of a sudden, and they hang out, stay over, and it's a really neat group of people that come. Obviously, they have planes and are able to do it, but it could just be a fun thing. Huh?
That could be. That would be great to bring a group like that to town. Well, with our new terminal.
New terminal, folks.
Yeah, they'll be like, oh, we got to check that out. Yeah.
New terminal, #1 burger, 51 bands. That's a no-brainer in my book.
There you go.
So hopefully next year we'll get that organized, and we do appreciate all the ideas that have come on the table. That was one that didn't quite make it in time, but I think could be fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's how it is, right? Each year you want to do a little bit more, but you don't want to overextend, and you want to do what you're doing and do it better.
That's right.
Yeah, which we know from year 1 to year 2.
So far, so good.
So far,
and
so
we
good.
We have a great lineup. Going to be a good June, of course.
Very full.
With the final, All Things Italian, the 10th year of that, and Vintage Power Wagon, and of course Art Walk, and so many different things. I'm sure there's a few we're missing. I think the the Jefferson County Fair
near the end of the month
is right at the end of the month too. So it's good times to be alive, folks.
Yep. I have a friend who grew up here and moved to Minneapolis, and he can't decide which weekend to come down in June.
Well, it's a tough one, isn't it?
I know. Like, well, you can't really go wrong. So,
you can't. But I mean, it'd be fun to have Cannoli and Greg Brown. But
exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
I know. Well, he was here for Fairfest last year, and
that was
absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was quite an
event. Even more stages this year too. So in three days of beverage, all kinds of different interesting stuff. So anyway.
All right.
What else you got on the docket, Michael Halley?
The mayor report. All he had was that it's National Police Week, and or Peace Officer Week. He had a proclamation. It's basically there was a peace officer memorial for fallen officers who died in the line of duty or were disabled in the line of duty Fairfield Police Department has one, Mr. Sutherland, who did die in the line of duty. So just kind of an honor for them.
Tip of the hat.
But it brings in this discussion that was happening on social media recently, and there's a misunderstanding in town that the police have a quota system that they send their officers out to collect a certain number of citations in a given period of time. So I had asked the former police chief about that, and she said, no, we don't. And I asked the current police chief, he's like, no, we don't, because it's illegal in the state of Iowa. So I was able to find the code that spells it out, that no peace officer shall ever be asked to obtain a certain number. And it was all specific to traffic violations in a given period of time, which is how a quota works. You have to get a certain number in a week, month, year, whatever. So quotas are illegal. That isn't the motivation for when the police do, for lack of a better term, they'll do a crackdown, or they'll do a focus. I remember they've done a focus on cyclists around the square, and it all starts with warnings, and then it gets into citations. And somebody told me they got a $100 citation for going through a stop sign on the square on a bike, and that feels excessive. I mean, I'll admit it. That seems like a lot of money for doing that. And so I don't know. I don't fully understand how the officer makes that call to give a warning, to give a citation. I don't know if the amount of the citation is set or given, or there's some wiggle room. So I want to find out a little bit more about procedure. But what I do know is that there's another misunderstanding that all those funds go back to the police department so they can buy stuff, and none of them do. If it's a city code that's broken, the fees, if there's a citation, those fees go into the city fund. If it's a state law, they go to the state. So would not call it like a revenue source per se. And I've been on the council 6 years, and I've never heard anyone say, hey, police officers, we need to stir up some more money, go give some tickets. That's never been policy, or it isn't done that way. It's if they decide to focus on taming traffic by enforcing the law, which is the speed limit, that's an internal policy. Now, if we feel like they're spending too much time doing that, they could be doing other things. Again, it's internal. It's not really a council member's place to say, but it is something I'd like to make more transparent. So I talked to the police chief, and I said, there could be some more transparency. I think he does a great job being transparent, but maybe even more like how do the officers decide how to use their time? How much, percentage of their time do they spend specifically on sitting, waiting for people to come down a certain road, speeding? The other side of it is that law enforcement is a big part of their job, public safety and protection, first responders is others, but that law enforcement segment is tricky because if you don't like the law, it's not, the police don't make the law, legislators make the law. So I have certain laws that I don't like that are on the books but I know if I violate them, then I could potentially get, the repercussions of that. But there's all levels to it. I just think that it's unfair to point fingers at our local police department because police around the country in different places have crossed the line. I mean, we see that a lot in the media, and obviously something needs to be done about that, clearly. But how bad is it here locally? We probably have some officers who don't have very good public relations skills. So what do you do about that? Are they breaking the law? Are they abusing their power? Or are they just not very good at approaching people in a way that makes them feel respected? So,
I mean, it always comes down to case by case, doesn't it? And if there's a complaint, one can issue that. I mean, I have heard some anecdotal reports of some young people of color that have been approached for different things, some with hands on, but I haven't followed up on that. I haven't yet seen, it's something obviously, if this is what you're referring to in particular, and it sounds like you're talking more about quotas than simply that, has been a kind of focus on that, which is not a bad thing if it's done well. And it sounds like you're just wanting to understand how it works and all that. And that's probably a shifting plateau, isn't it? Because, I mean, they're not going to say we spend this many this percentage of our time doing that? Because I bet it shifts some and all that.
I'm sure it shifts. I mean, but
I like the idea of just trying to get a handle on it so people know.
Yeah, why is that cop sitting there and looking for a speeder? I'm curious. Like, if is it complaint driven? Are the neighbors saying people are speeding? And I know that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Happens a lot, actually. I mean, I get calls from people saying the cars are barreling past,
and they're
my
worried,
house.
right, about kids, and
or themselves, or whatever. So, but yeah, it's interesting. But it's not a simple matter of they go out to fish for tickets because they want more money. It never comes back to them in that way. And so I think that's important to know. It's not a revenue producer for the police department. I mean, I had one young man tell me that he guaranteed that they bring in more money than they spend, and it kind of comes back to some of our other departments, our water department, our wastewater department, they bring in more than they spend because they're enterprise funds. And the park and rec department is trying to reach a point where they bring in 45% of what they spend. They're trying to become, balance their budget that way.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what the percentage for the police, but my understanding is the only money they're going to get is if they get grants. They don't have a revenue that goes to their department.
But there is the element of like drug busts and cars and
the seizures.
So seizures as a
exactly.
whole. I don't know what percentage.
Other one, but I'll continue to look into this. We can keep having these conversations because I want to understand it. I think people in general want to understand it, but I can only go off of when I hear a specific claim or.
Which you're saying very clearly in this. It's not, those things are not related.
Yeah, there's no quote.
And anybody who's ever gotten a ticket, I bet many of us have.
Who, me?
God bless the ones who haven't. And but I mean, when you do, it always feels like whatever. And then, I mean, we all have seen on the highways, state patrols. All of a sudden, there's a bunch out different times, and I've always assumed that there was something to that. And you're just saying here,
usually is. Yeah, they actually will advertise ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
For certain holidays where there's a lot of drunk driving, they'll advertise ahead of time. They're cracking down. More on that later. But
yep. Well, thank you. That's it's interesting it's good just to know that you can try to figure it out and try to understand it. And we're all here in the community doing different aspects of things. How we can figure out to do it together is a good thing.
Yeah. And I think that of all the city departments, the police department is the one that most people would not want to have interaction with if they didn't have to, because
unless they need them,
which is interesting because in 2014 the calls for service were up 20% from the year before, so people are calling them more. And this is interesting, traffic stops were up, traffic citations were down, and accidents were down. So I'm not saying it's related, but it's just interesting if you look at the numbers over time.
More about the relational parts, but
it was actually fewer citations. Real quick, Park and Rec, moving forward with the pool.
30 seconds.
Yep, pool's going to be done mid-June.
Woo!
Yep, and
that's a dive.
That was nice. Yeah, and they're talking about their hours. The hours operation will be 1 to 8 Monday through Friday, and 1 to 6 Saturday and Sunday.
Say that one more time.
1 o'clock to 8 o'clock Monday through Friday. 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Or maybe it was 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday. I'll have to look that up.
All right. In other words, it's going to be number 1, and it's siesta ocha time over there at the swimming pool. Thanks, guys. Good to see you. See you next time, Michael. City Business. We're out of here.